it's Andrea from Movers and Bakers. Today I'm going to share with you how I make my orange and cranberry scones. These are beautiful, fluffy buttermilk scones full of the flavour of orange and cranberry. You're going to love them. Let's get baking. Alright, to start with, I am going to pop my sugar into my mixer. Now you can do this whole thing by hand in a bowl with your fingers or with a pastry blender if you've got one, but I'm choosing to do it in my food processor. So my caster sugar, this is a really generous tablespoon of caster sugar. I'm going to pop that into my food processor. And I'm only doing this because of the flavours in this scone. So I'm going to use the rind of a whole orange, and I'm going to grate this directly into my food processor. But the reason I'm doing it this way is because I find I get the flavours of the orange a lot more if I mix it with my sugar first. So I'm going to grate and make sure as well you grate your orange directly into whatever bowl you're using rather than doing it in a separate bowl and then transferring it, because when you grate the rind off your orange, not only are you looking for the actual rind, but you'll also get some of the lovely oils in your orange coming off as well, and that's going to add to the flavour of your scones. So it's really important that you grate it directly into your bowl that you're using. And while I'm finishing zesting my orange is a really good time for me to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button so you always know when I release new videos. So I'm done with my orange. I don't need that anymore, but I'm going to use a spatula to get all that lovely rind from the underneath of my zester as well. And as you can see, because it's so moist, I'm also getting lots of the oils from the skin of my orange as well. So really important to get all of that off. And once you are done with that, we are going to give this a very quick whiz or mix around, depending on how you're mixing up. So I'm popping this into my food processor. So I'm just going to mix this up a little bit, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow all those lovely oils from my orange and the orange zest to mix with the sugar and really brings out the oranginess, the zestiness of the flavour. And that's it, that's all I am doing. Now to that, I am going to add the rest of my dry ingredients. To start with, I've got some plain flour here. Don't forget, if you want to make this yourself, I put all the quantities of the ingredients that I've used and all the ingredients themselves on my blog, which you can find a link to below this video. And to that, I'm also going to add some baking powder, baking soda, and some salt. And to that, I am going to add my butter. Now this is cold butter. You want to keep your butter and keep all your mixture from now as cold as possible and handle it as little as possible, which is why I'm not using my hands and I'm using a machine instead. So I'm going to pulse this again to get all that butter broken up, and my mixture should end up looking almost like breadcrumbs. If I can show you my mixture, you will see it's gone lovely and yellowy, but you can see how it looks almost like breadcrumbs in there, and that's exactly what we want. To that, I'm now going to add my cranberries. Now, these are dry cranberries, and I've actually chopped them up a bit finer as well, just so that they spread out a bit more, so we get more cranberries going through all the scones. So I'm going to put those in there. And my last ingredient that I'm going to put in is my buttermilk. Now, I love using buttermilk because I find it makes my scones much more tender than just using milk. And I just really like the flavour I get from it, the slight tanginess, the texture, everything about it. So I always use buttermilk when I make scones. But if you want to use just regular milk, that's absolutely fine too. So my buttermilk's going in. And once I've put my buttermilk in and I mix it up, I am not going to mix this too much at all. So I want to mix it until it's just starting to come together. If you find that you haven't got quite enough buttermilk and it's not coming together as you'd like, feel free to add a bit more milk, or you can even put a little bit of orange juice in for some extra orange flavour if you want to. And there you go, my mixture is done. So you can see how it has all clumped together. That is exactly what we want. So I'm going to make myself a little bit of room. Now on my work surface, I've obviously cleaned my work surface. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour, and this is just going to stop my mixture from sticking to my table. So, tipping out your mixture, don't worry if it spreads out, we're going to squeeze it all together. So once you've got your mixture on your work surface, I'm just going to add a little bit more flour on top just to make sure it doesn't stick to my hands. And all you're going to do is you're going to squeeze it all together. We're not kneading, so very important that you don't knead. You are just bringing it all together into one big lump. And then use a bit more flour if you need it so it doesn't stick to your hands. You're just going to press it out into a flat layer. So I'm handling this actually very, very little. So you're pressing it together and you want it to be about 1 inch thick. So once you have flattened it out, we are going to use our cutter. Now, little top tips with your cutter. You can use a fluted one, you can use a plain round one if you want. If you haven't got any cutters, you can use a glass or something similar to that. Whatever you have handy works. But when you use it, really important, in between every stamping out of your shapes, you must dip it into some flour just to prevent it from sticking to your dough. So I start off with it being dipped in. Now it doesn't look like there's very much on there, which it won't for the first time, but because this mixture is a bit wet, it will stop it from sticking to the next ones. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, when you press down, do not press down and twist. You have to press down and pull it up again. So you go down and up, not twisted around and then up at all. Very important. Straight down and straight back up again. Exactly like that. So I stamp out all the space that I have here before I pull it up, and then I'm going to put it on my baking tray. And once you've stamped out all you can from that mixture, we're going to start taking them out. Now, you don't want to handle them again too much. As you pull them out, just any bits of fruit or anything that are sticking out, just push them very gently back in, just to stop them from burning once they're in the oven. So you're going to go all the way around and just push them in. And then I have here a baking tray ready with a bit of parchment on. So I'm just going to pop them on. Now, the ways you can bake them if you want to, you can spread them out like that. If you spread them out as they bake, they will each bake much more as individual scones. I prefer to push mine slightly closer together, and they will spread a little as they bake. But because I've put mine closer together, they end up being much more soft and tender with just the brown on the top, which is exactly how I like them to be. But if you want them to be individually baked as individual scones and be really brown all the way around, please do space them apart. It's all up to personal preference. Once you have got all the scones out, we're just going to squeeze our mixture back together again and repeat. Don't forget though, the more you handle it, the tougher your scones will be. So remember, you want to try and handle it as little as possible. And once you have stamped out all your scones, all that remains to be done is to give it a bit of what would normally be an egg wash, but I'm not using egg, I'm just using some milk. So this is just normal milk, and I'm going to use a pastry brush, and I'm just going to dip it over the top, brush it over the top of my scones. Now, when you put your milk on your scones, you need to make sure that it just goes on the top layer and not so much that it drips down the sides. And the reason for that is if it drips down the sides, it stops the scones from rising. So if it drips down one side, you'll end up with lopsided scones where it doesn't rise on one side because there's milk dripped down it. So you want to put just enough milk on, just to cover the top so that it gets a lovely, beautiful golden brown colour, but not so much that it's going to drip down the side and hinder the rise of your scones. And while I've been making my scones, I've had my oven preheating at 190 Celsius, that's 375 Fahrenheit, and these are going to go in for 17 to 20 minutes. And I will see you on the other side with baked scones. Okay, so my scones are out of the oven. They are completely baked and they are absolutely beautiful. I just wanted to very quickly show you the difference between the scones the more you work your mixture. So this is a really good example of one of my first batches. You can see if I turn it all the way around how it's risen really evenly and beautifully. So that was the one where we just pressed it and we stamped them out and we put them straight on the baking tray, and that was it. When I reworked my dough and squished it all back together and I kept doing it, one of my last ones has turned out like this. You can see it's really uneven. There's a few lumps and bumps. You can see where the folds were. All that kind of thing. So just to show you the difference, why it's really important to handle your dough as little as possible and also go down and up and all the things that I shared with you before. But there you have it, orange and cranberry scones, absolutely gorgeous. My whole house smells amazing now. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you have, and I shall see you next time. Happy baking.